Just stop it. The run-of-the-mill, cheesy, humdrum bullshit status quo just tires me out. What fascinates me are the industry disruptors, the superhuman frontiersmen or women who go through hell to achieve their goals. Join me as we meet and learn from those mavericks, rebels, and business leaders that aren't afraid to piss off the establishment in order to make radical change for good. Sponsored by Johto PR, the disruptive anti-PR firm that murders your competition with cinder blocks and cyanide. This is Disruption Interruption. Welcome back, everybody, to Disruption Interruption. I'm your host, KJ, and we're here today to talk to another industry leader that has steered off the lame, tired path of the status quo. Today's guest hails from a family of real estate developers. And in addition to his impressive pedigree in real estate and construction, he's an award winner in several disciplines, such as lighting, design, cooking, and education. He's an overachiever. He's also been a press associate, contributing to several worldwide magazines for technical and editorial content for the past decade. He doesn't sleep. But we are talking to him today because he and his team are stopping kids from being victims of the internet. How? By being a Metaverse family-friendly content creator, publishing content in their own digital building where kids and families are safe, participating in esports, e-education, and e-entertainment. Coming to us live from the greater Tampa Bay area, please welcome our disruptor, founder at Seismic Transmedia, Robert Lentane, aka Bob.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, I said e-education and e-entertainment because education and entertainment have this connotation with it in the real world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we're talking about esports and e-this and e-that. Bob, before we get going, I want you to tell our audience, and welcome, by the way, what is your disruptive ingredient for innovation? Yours.
It's funny you say that because I've been thinking about it and I said, well, I always been a disruptor in everywhere when I started in the lighting world. And now recently I saw a thought about, they were saying, people are looking for workhorse, not unicorn. And I consider myself a workhorse. And I see myself as an old guy going into a young people's world, right? And this is my disruptive contribution because I come in with all my, my multiple generation experience into this world, which is totally virtual. People of my age, they don't think about that. They're very well anchored into reality. And here I am, this guy, that late boomer that is going into this virtual world. So I think that would be my contribution to disrupt this world would be that. Coming from my viewpoint, I could have had another beautiful, this is my career. I could have chose something safe. I could have been an exec. I could have been, but no, I went and jumped right into something that is very, very, you can have something hotter in the moment, right? And you couldn't have something more far away from reality, being in the virtual reality. So I think this is my contribution and also my way of coming into this disruption, to disrupt that market, because I look at what others are doing and they're focusing on a little problem, special gloves, special goggles, this or that. I come in and I said, well, let's attack this old children thing, like the children's safety, because, and you'll probably know, I have a 7-year-old and that was my motivation, right? So from that viewpoint, I come in and I said, okay, well, I can control my son because he's playing on screen. But the day that he's going to have goggles on, what am I going to do?
Right. What are you going to do? Well, I think it's really very interesting that you are the first disruptor that has said as their main ingredient to bring together all this generational decades of experience, right? So I say generational decades because you're taking into account so many generations and so many target audiences. Do something as a huge, some people might call it a leap of faith, right? But then rooted in that is how you're going to protect children, and you're looking at it from the viewpoint of your child. What are some of the dangers and the existing status quo that you're very concerned about with your child that's happening with other children?
Well, first, most of them you can't see, right? Because my son at 6 was already very aware on how to change the screen on his iPad, on the computer, and everything. So sometimes I would, from my far eyes, I would see that he was doing something, and as I was approaching, it would change. So they have this mechanism of, privacy. I want my privacy. I want this. I want that. So I had to start thinking of, okay, what are the problem? And then when I start researching, I was horrified. And honestly, because there's cyber stalking, there's identity theft, like one of the things is that my own bank account was attached to my iPad and my son was playing on it. So he was buying stuff, like he was having a ball. And then one day, I get the bill and I'm like, whoa, what is this?
Was he 6 or 7 at the time?
Was he 6? He was 6. I realized that, it's very subtle. Like there's a saying, when your kid is quiet, something's happening. Well, I can tell you that it is real, and parents, and I'm not the only one. At first I was like, well, maybe I'm over exaggerating. My house always been surrounded with computers, so I'm a technology guy by nature. But when I started to talk to my friends or go to other people's house and looking at their kids, and they were doing the same, and I started asking questions, they said, you're right. And I said, what's the solution? Well, I don't know. Everywhere I would turn, they didn't know. I mean, there's amazing cybersecurity company. There's all kinds of settings you can do on device, but that doesn't stop what's happening in this virtual world.
Because it's ever evolving and they're getting way more creative and more creative than we are.
My God, when I start this idea of going into the metaverse, I was like, okay, that's going to be awesome. Everything's going to be there. But I feel like I walk in the desert, like that old movie Bugsy, he walks into Las Vegas and there's just a sand. And then he said, well, I'm going to build a casino. Well, I feel the same thing. And when I start looking around, what was there was, drugs, porn, gambling. Those guys have tons of money to experiment and play with and throw away. And normally they're early adopters.
They are absolutely normal. They were early adopters in digital advertising. They were early adopters in the internet. And it's no surprise that they're early adopters now, right?
Exactly. The funniest thing is always, when I was young, I was attracted with this kind of stuff, and I didn't understand why. It took me years to understand that they have so much power, they have so much energy, they have so much creativity that whenever they do a campaign, boom, like you go in, they know the buttons, right? And when I started to think about it, I said, well, I can do the same thing, in a positive way. And hence Seismic was born. And the transmedia part was, at first I just wanted to do one thing, and then I start looking, well, I got to do something else, and then something else, and then there's augmented reality, there's virtual reality, and then we have all these technology. And I said, well, I cannot leave one aside and say I'm just going to do that. So of course, the problem got bigger, my vision got clearer, and I said, okay, there's 3 things that I like, because I cannot do everything. So I like entertainment, esports, and education, and let's roll, So
you picked that. Okay, good. So sports, entertainment, and education. And
yes.
Some people might think, wow, there's all the dangers that you're trying to help kids with, but you're going into a universe where they're just creating another alternate reality with all of the same things. Right? So how is your vision and what Seismic Transmedia doing that's different?
Well, the one thing that, I'm also an artist, right?
Yes, I know you have a long list of things that I couldn't even put in the bio. I swear to God, I don't think you sleep.
I do. I sleep very well. When I sleep, I sleep. And when I work, I work. That's the thing. But the one thing that is common in all those things is the creative part, right? I always look for creative channels to express myself. So creator attract creators. So I'm always surrounded by other artists, singers, sculptor, painters. And one thing that yes, PRs, absolutely. Well, and you are an artist and an amazing artist in what you're doing. And one thing that I notice is that how in the real life, if you don't have an agent, if you're not in the system, you don't make it. And trust me, I've never been in the system. So it was really, really hard for me. But the most important thing is that once you're in the system, you have no control. So it's a give and take. I love
And
control.
when you're the system, I know most of our listeners know what you're talking about, but let's explain that a little bit.
Well, if you go into, you sign up, let's say you sign up with a record label, or you get an agency, or you get a sign up by a gallery as an artist. Well, you have a contract about this stick that you don't understand. You have to pay somebody to translate to you, and hope forbid a line, and then you get caught on this and you lose all your assets. So at the bottom line is that you lose control. You give away your art and you hope that you're going to get some money. When I started to look at this metaverse thing, I realized that it was built on blockchain technology and what we call a smart contract. And a smart contract, it was, for me, a revelation, because from the get-go, you can assign, the distribution, and whenever income's going to come, the distribution will be done forever. And then the other thing that I liked about it is that, like you would get also recurring revenue. Most of my friend artists, have up and down, and I do too. Well, I cook or I do something else, but some others don't have these channels to express themselves, and they're just in one thing, and it's perfect because they're very mastering what they're doing. So when I look at all this, I realize, well, that could be something to keep them creating, or at least energizing themselves if they have recurring revenue. So that's when I started to think, well, I'm gonna start helping artists and creators. And that's why I said, I could have been in R&D, I could have been in hardware, I could have been in software development, but really the content is king. We've been hearing that for the past 25 years, content is king. Well, guess what? The people that are creating, like you and I, are important asset.
The artists, yes, that is true. They're creating content.
And most of the time we're forgotten, or we're putting on the back burner, or, oh, thanks, that was a good piece, and we'll take it and we'll make royalty on it, and you got your check and goodbye. So that's when I started to think, well, I can help those guys. And then from there, it became very clear to me that my mission would be to have a safe place for them, to expose their project, and also for my kids and the visitor to go in a place where they can hang out and learn things. So that's when Seismic was born, basically.
That's awesome. And so tell us a bit about Seismic Transmedia. Like, what are you doing? We talked about, and I mentioned it briefly, publishing content in your own digital building. So you're bringing all of your skill sets from the past in, the construction, the design, the artistry, the content, and you're also bringing generations together. So you have the little ones, you have the younger generations that are so interested and so curious, right? And you're bridging them with who?
Well, let me give you my example. And that's when, again, like I'm at home, we're cooking, we're eating, and my mother-in-law comes twice a year. So she's here, and the first thing she does is she says, Hunter, my son's Hunter, I have a problem with my phone. And my son pick up the phone and start fixing it, right? So I like that synergy. And then they're talking about it, and my mother-in-law has more time than us because she comes, but we still work, we still run around. But it's like a marathon when she comes. We have to celebrate 5, 6 birthday. I mean, everything has to be done, and then she goes. But as she go, my son at 6 years old was already doing some FaceTime with her. So on his iPad, he would call her, and then she would say, hey, Hunter, how do I fix this? And then I realized that there was a connection there. She doesn't ask me because she thinks I'm too busy or she doesn't want to, but Hunter, she's, dead on. And that's how it goes. Then I realized, I start looking around the relationship of youngers and elderly, and it is an amazing bridge they have.
It is.
So I said, part of our experience, wouldn't that be cool if I can if Saturday morning when I'm trying to sleep in, because I do sleep in sometimes, when Hunter gets up, he could go in our building, and then mother-in-law, she's also an early bird, so they can go and hang out there and go see the latest concert or the latest exhibit from painters or the latest courses or whatever they want to do in the virtual world. They could meet up in a space, and have a happening.
Yeah, and connect together. And family concerts, right? Families going to concerts, sports, education. So, this is all virtual. This is all ideation. This is all significance, right? Like paint a picture, paint the mask.
Well, it's funny you say that because when I started my career, I was in show business. I was a techie.
Of course you were. It's another thing you've done.
I don't sing. I don't do anything, but I was a lighting guy and I was working with a team and we always stayed together. Some of them became very famous. Some of them worked with Cirque du Soleil and all that stuff. And my mentor, we always stayed in touch. And then when I told him, I called him up one day and I said, hey, I'm going into this metaverse virtual world. Do you have anything because I know that before we do anything, we have to do like a prototype, like when we raise money for a show, we do, mood board, we do a storyboard, and, as the time was progressing, we would do 3D rendering. So I know we had the 3D file somewhere. So I said, why don't we what show could we take from a spin-off of the circus? Because most of the artists have started their own circus company or theater company. Who can you talk to bring me a show? And we could start, see how feasible it is to bring on the metaverse. And here it goes, it comes back and it says, well, I have a show, Pinocchio. So here we go. We start looking at the mood board. How are we going to do it? So we need programmers. We need this. We need that. And suddenly it became alive in the virtual world. So we set up a team. I have people in India that are programmers. I have people in Montreal that are creators. We have people in England that are drafters. So all these people started to get together because of our medium, which is the metaverse. We can put up stuff, and then once it's up there, everybody can see it. And it doesn't matter the language, it doesn't matter because...
But I want you to paint out the framework for it, because many people still don't understand the metaverse. Okay. They still can't see it. They still can't relate it to real life. Like the building, the construction, like how that works in the digital.
Absolutely.
Like paint the mask for our audience, because there's tons of media out there about the metaverse, but people still don't get it.
Well, first, it's going to be a progressive introduction. People, first of all, that's why we choose those areas that we're going in, because I know I can have control. I know I can make amazing stuff, creative. It will be first. You're looking to
start with the ideal scene. Start with the very end. Start with the final half product of what that's going to look like, so people can get an idea and then compare your progression to it.
Yes. Okay. So the final picture is you're walking into a big building, which I could call a mall, and then you're walking and you're seeing all these outlets, creative outlets, and you can go in and you can be you would be with your kids or your friends or your family. And then you're looking at stuff that normally would take you energy, time, effort, and money, because going to the mall, you need gas and everything that goes in between. So you're walking into a mall and you're seeing things and you're discovering. And then the beauty of it is that you can walk in and you can look at them in a real environment in 3 dimensions.
When you say look at them, like they could go into this huge mall and they decide they're going to go to a concert. So in one section of the mall,
there's a theater. Yeah, there's a theater. They go in the theater, and once they're in the theater, they sit down and they watch a show. Now they can upgrade. They can go and watch it backstage, and then later, if they can be part of the show.
Wow.
So, yes. So depending on the experience you want to do, you'll be able to experiment and have different roles and function into an experience.
That's really cool. So I get that about concerts.
Yes.
What about sports?
Well, esports actually is more, we decided when I look at the esports scene, it was a very funny thing because my first software company, I fired my employees because they were gamers. I didn't understand what a gamer was doing. They were doing lawn parties, they were doing all this stuff, and there was tons of merchandising. They were buying stupid toys. And I was like, I don't get it.
You didn't get it back then.
And later, and this I had a son, and I started looking at him, I started to understand. And God, like I just had a revelation. I said, well, this is a world by itself. Like this is a world that needs to be protected. And they need to be, because I witnessed my brother. It was so funny. His son was a gamer, and he didn't understand. My brother is a mechanical engineer, and he would come home and his son would play. One day he took the computer and threw it out. That was his answer to having his son stop gaming. It didn't last too long. And then what happened is that from that, I understand, and we would have talk about it. He said, I don't know what to do. And I would tell him, embrace it. Let's try to make it happen. And my brother didn't have this frame of mind. So when I became father, I said, okay, what can I do? And then I tried to introduce my son to sports, soccer, baseball, all that stuff. No, he was not really a physical guy. He likes to play soccer once in a while, but to play every week, no. But now I got him I said, okay, you're going to be a gamer. You're going to start training like an athlete. You're going to get up in the morning. You're going to do your gaming. You're going to have breakfast. You're going to go to school. After school, you're going to train. And then when we say it's enough, there's no whining, crying, because I don't tolerate this, but it's enough. And by himself, 8 o'clock, turns the computer off, go takes a bath, comes, snuggle, we read stories. So now he got the idea, he got the frame of mind that this is his job. This is going to be, if he wants to do that, he's going to do that, and he has to have discipline. So I think, I'm not saying this is the best or this is the worst, but I realized that I had to give him the opportunity to control it himself. And let's say in 5 years, he said, Dad, I want to be a glass blower. Well, guess what? He's gonna become the best glass blower.
The best glass blower there is. So in your mall, right?
Yeah.
If someone wants to attend an esports game or get involved in esports, like how does that work?
Well, the mall is not there yet, right? I designed it.
We're still talking about ideal scene because you're definitely working up towards that.
So,
you're raising capital for that. So explain how people can get involved in esports, like on the Metaverse and attending events and things like that.
Yeah. Well, right now it's building communities. We're working. I decided, because when I look at all this, I said, that was so funny. I interview like a bunch of kids. I took 25, 30 kids and I said, okay, what would be the ideal scene? What game would you like to play? Oh my God, I want to play this, I want to play that. Okay, I said, okay, awesome. Now let's pick one. And they're kids, right? Okay, so we want to do this game. Okay, I said, second thing, which one of them you're going to make money out of? And they're like, what? I said, well, if you're going to do something, you got to have an exchange. Getting little hats and icons is nice and points, but you got to have something back. It's your time. So they came to a conclusion that they would choose Fortnite, doing advertising for Fortnite or anything, but it's just okay, well, and then because not only they could make money, but the game is set up for having team. The whole environment is made for team playing, and
so this is a category of esports, is what you're saying.
Exactly. It was fun, and they loved it.
And how does that work with bringing the older generations together with the kids?
They're not there yet.
Okay.
And it's fine, because my viewpoint is that, first of all, let's get anything started, right? We can talk about it, years and years, we can analyze, but let's do it, and it's funny because now we do LAN parties, we do everything that, I didn't understand. We do them at the office. And the kids are in charge, and they organize it, and we have adult supervision and all. And even parents would call me and say, "What's happening tonight? Why is everybody so excited?" And I said, "Well, you can come." "What do you mean I can come?" "Come and check it out." Okay, so they would come and see it. Right now, it's just a positioning. And what we did is that in Montreal, we're opening an office, so we joined up with an event, and we did a competition to start scouting talents. So we did a tournament Florida against Montreal. That was awesome because my boys were
What kind of tournament?
it was a fortnight tournament.
Okay.
And they play against each other. And that's like I said, that's one thing that I didn't want to put attention on, but I wanted them to play. I want them to start training. I want them to start to be a team. So I picked one game and I said, that's going to be the game. And now we can build on to that. Once we have a structure, we'll probably acquire a couple gaming company and then we'll have our own game, right? And then we'll bring in, the elderly, we'll bring in the family, we'll bring, the entertainment, education into it. Because I think over the year, the metaverse is going to be, like you're not only going to play a game, you're going to do something that you learn, you're going to do something that you entertain, you're going to do in real life. Like it's funny, I was watching like a war movie or series or whatever, and they said most of the time we wait. The battle, you see the battle scene, it's like very intense, but 90% of the time they are waiting.
Hurry up and wait.
Exactly.
True.
So I thought, well, why don't we, where the area we're going in, well, while you're waiting, because you should be waiting, whatever strategy or whatever in the game, well, why don't you educate yourself? Why don't you entertain yourself? So that's when I saw the synergy of having a building, putting many different things in it. And eventually, like the ideal scene is that you will have to that. And let's say, if I have a boy, let's say I had a girl and she's not interested in battle. Well, I can organize something that she would be, or for her demographic, right? Eventually have a game that she likes. Like in Asia, in the Philippines, Axie Infinity is very, very big. And most of the players are women. So, I can go into, we can bring in stuff. And that's the idea, is that I don't have a preconceived idea and saying, this is what we're doing and we're not. I know it's going to evolve. I know it's going to, some stuff we started at the beginning of the company, we let go. People say, why did you let go? Well, first of all, there's no interest. People are not interested by that. And kids are not interested. And guess what? I mean, they may be big money, but it's not about the money. It's about the experience. Right.
It seems to me like this is a blank canvas. I mean, you have this huge mall, for lack of better words, and areas where you can go for different entertainment, different concerts, different this. You have a whole esports section. I mean, it could even get into traditional sports, right? Not just games.
Yes.
And then you have an education component, right? And so what is that like? That particular section of the metaverse or the mall, there's different rooms or areas where people can go learn, attend classes. What is that like?
Well, it's funny you say that because when I start developing things, I have little books and the education component, I taught a lot. I taught at university, college. I had my own school. I worked with all kinds of educational and nothing turned me on. And then one day I'm looking and I said, well, why don't we mix this together? Now, why don't we mix education and entertainment? And then I start looking and then I found something called entertraining. And I said, wow, that's awesome. So like
entertainment with training.
Yes.
Entertraining.
So, and then I said, okay, what would I do with it? Because when I started looking at it, like the concept was not what I want, but what we did with it is that we said, wouldn't that be cool if you choose a topic, choose a trainer, choose an environment where you want to go, and then at the end of it, you can make money with it. What do you mean, what make money? Well, this is what, I came up with. So let's say you want to learn math, right? And then your favorite athlete is, I don't know, Messi, Let's talk about somebody popular. And you want to go into an area like the Grand Canyon. You don't want to be in the classroom. You want to be in the Grand Canyon. So you're learning math taught by Messi because he's an avatar, right? And he's teaching you math. And then you're in the Grand Canyon. And you have your, the props, the set, and everything is there, and you're learning math. Then you pass your test, and you're pretty good at math. Then you want to start learning to play the guitar. And you're done with Messi. Well, you take Messi and you put it on the marketplace, you sell it, and you change it for Bono or whatever, the Edge or whatever guitar player you like. And then he's teaching you guitar, right? and then you're tired, and then you putting for sale, and then you buy another avatar. And so you have a choice of whatever subject you want to do. You have a choice of whatever trainer,
whatever teacher you want.
Exactly. And then, you would have also, like, we have Google that scan the world in all the crevice. So I don't need to reinvent the world. I can just go and create a bridge, an API, or some kind of a with Google, and grab whatever they have and bring, my avatar, and say, okay, this is where you're going to learn. So that became entertaining, because it's not only,
what a cool way to go to school. What a cool way to learn. It doesn't even have to be kids, but I look at this as such an economic opportunity for artists, for scientists, for teachers, for thought leaders, you could learn anything. You could learn politics from your favorite politician. Maybe That's not such a good example, but
it doesn't matter, as long as you're creating something and you're learning something, and you'll know. I mean, after 5 minutes of Bono, seeing his face, and maybe you'll get tired of it, and I look at all my little players, my little not so little players and that's what they do. They in this game that they're playing, Fortnite, that one of the big thing is they bring all these 3D persona. And I thought, wow, and that's why they're so excited. I said, why don't we bring this to education? Why it has to be me? I don't want to, I know I was quite an entertainer when I was teaching, but at the end of the day, I'm not for everybody, right? Maybe this face is not.
Exactly. Well, and you can have amazing teachers that could rent avatars from famous people to make it more entertaining, right? I mean, there's the economic implications of this is just wild.
Infinite.
So tell us a little bit about Little Bob. Were you did you drive your mother crazy? Always being a disruptor, always being ever curious, always being interested. What were you like?
I would come home with blood. I would come home with stuff in my hand. I'm going to tell you something funny. My favorite day was Tuesday night and Thursday night, because it was garbage day. In the city, you have people throwing things. And I was an electronic maniac. And I would go and check if there was TVs or radio. And I would bring them, home. And my mom would look at me and say, what are you doing? I said, oh, there's something in it I want. And then I would cut all the little parts. I didn't even know what they were for. I would cut everything and organize them. I mean, I had such a beautiful youth. And then I start to find out the power of mentors. And all my life, I had mentors. I had mechanic mentors, artists, I had accountant, I had finance, name it. It's always been something that was innate in me. I needed to talk to somebody that had knowledge, that was, that didn't have, how could I say that? They didn't care what I was doing. They just liked to share. And that was me. So my mom basically was worried, because I would be gone I would get up in the morning, get out, and come back when the lights were on. People don't know that, but that was the signal. When the light turns on, you got to be home. Whatever in between, try to not, go to jail, hospital, or and that's how I got
today, is it? But yeah, so you were out of the house as soon as the light hit, and you were at home as soon as the light hit.
And it was a quest, it was a treasure quest. I always looked for something. Even I had a beautiful picture in my head while I'm telling you this. I was sitting on the garage, an old box, and watching my mechanic mentor taking a carburetor apart, just sitting there and not asking anything. And he would show me parts and say, oh, this is how you clean it. This is what it.
And you loved it.
I was fascinated.
Yeah.
And I could sit there for hours. And then he would say, are you hungry? Yeah. And then he would go in, come back with sandwich, and we would eat. And, I create myself a beautiful youth. I never wait after anybody. When I wanted something, I asked for it. 90% of the time I got it. When I didn't, I worked for it, and that was me. That was young Bob. I was everywhere,
No wonder you're creating this.
Yes.
So how do people get a hold of you if they have questions about the metaverse? They want to get involved in Seismic Media. They have anything and everything. How do they get a hold of you?
Well, it's very simple. We they go to our website, Seismic Transmedia. They can go on our YouTube account. Another thing you were saying, explain to me this. I mean, there's so many facets. I got tired of explaining, so I start making video. And one of my friends says, Bob, you're telling all yours. I said, if people copy this, they'll make money, and I'll be happy because I will always be the originator, right? So there's no, and this world is so big. How many painting company there is in this world right now? Which one goes out of business? The one that don't work, but there's always a new one coming in. So that's why in the metaverse, I encourage everybody to take an idea, take my idea, take any idea, and just run with it, right? And it's so funny because, a couple of days ago, we had a launch from somebody that, it's a bit controversial, did some NFT cards. And we had we have a similar project going on, and people say, well, we don't know if it's going to work and this and that. Well, guess what? This guy made 4.5 million in 12 hours. So I don't know. I think let's say we really, really fail and we make 500,000, I mean, just think about it. So there is a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm here to help. I'm here to share. I mean, I have my pictures, my phone numbers on LinkedIn, everywhere.
Yes, I was going to say, you can find you on LinkedIn, find you on Seismic Transmedia website, find you on Seismic Transmedia's YouTube, and reach out to you.
Yeah, even on TikTok.
Artists, kids.
Well, I'm just a concerned father. At the end, of everything I could have done, I have the best life because at night, when I go pick up my son, this is my second shift. He's gaming. I'm not too far watching what he's doing. We're talking. I'm cooking for him. I make sure that he's a good player. And sometimes I see that he's very agitated, so I cut the sugar down. I want him to be happy and amazing players for the time that he wants to be. He may not in a year or two grow up and say, hey, I want to be an architect. Well, let's see how we're going to.
Then we can have architecture education in the metaverse.
Metaverse, exactly.
Well, I'm glad at the end of the day you're a concerned parent, and I'm sure many of our listeners are glad about that too. And I really thank you about painting this picture of the metaverse. You made it very real. People still have lots of questions, but I wish you all the best of luck. I don't even need to wish you luck. I know that as you're going along, just like you stated, this is going to be wildly, wildly successful. And the economic implications are just infinite.
Well, that follows. And that's why when we met, because we didn't talk about this, but when we met, that's one thing that seduced me is that your passion for what you're doing. Right. There's a whole difference. I meet investor every day, and some of them I will never work with them because they're not in it because they like it. They're in it because other reason. And what you're doing, and the same thing with interview, I get requests from different people all over the world. And I didn't feel that I could communicate what I really want to communicate. And thank you for that. And thank you for being who you are.
You are so welcome. Well, I have a soft spot for entrepreneurs and disruptors, and I understand what pioneers go through. We have a lot of arrows in our backs.
Yeah.
And probably education of what we're doing is the biggest barrier to entry that we have. So share this podcast far and wide. Tell people what you're doing. And thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap, everyone. Thanks for listening to Disruption Interruption. If you learned something today, go tell someone about this podcast and tell them to go disrupt their markets with a tidbit from this show. Thanks for listening to Disruption Interruption, where we transform lives, change consumer behavior, alter economics, and never accept the status quo. Ciao for now.